Welcome, everyone, to this Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and tools that you can use from discussing the research, stories, and background from recognized experts and practitioners to accelerate your impact in your current role. Today, I'm very glad to be joined by Dr. Jason Womack, who is an instructor of leadership studies at a military university and the author of several best-selling books, including his most recent one, Get Momentum, and Your Best Just Got Better. He admits that life is busy, but he won't compromise when it comes to increasing productivity and maximizing time for the things he calls his MITs, which we're going to go through in this episode. He teaches practical solutions to everyday workflow that will free you up to focus on your bigger leadership goals and projects. Welcome to the program, Jason.
Hello, Charles. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today.
I love always to start with a little background on your journey. What got you interested in this topic and made you one of kind of the eminent thinkers in this space?
I ask a lot of questions, Charles. What got me started was looking around and seeing people who had been through similar programs I had. They had similar degrees to what I had. They were doing similar jobs to what I had. And yet there was a difference in how stressed some people were or weren't, how, quote, successful some people were or weren't. And so I kept navigating toward what are the people who I want to be like. And that got me started in a lot of just, I would say, subjective, very not research-based. But I found that if I invite someone to a coffee or a beer, they would share stories with me. And so I would say, Charles, what got me started and what I'll encourage you all listeners or watchers to think about as you're gaining momentum in this thing called time management and productivity is I like to go and hang out with the people who are doing it, whatever the it is. Charles, we're not parents. Jody and I couldn't have kids. So when I look out and I see what people are dealing with, what they're managing, what they're experiencing, I understand that there's a wide range. And even in the introduction, right, I won't compromise on, and then there's the follow on to that. What I've realized is that the people I associate with, they wake up in the morning with a plan and they go to sleep at night with some way of measuring how they acted, behaved, worked in accordance with that plan. And so my mission, if you will, my purpose on the planet is to help people close the gap between what they want to do and what they did during the day.
Love that. Sounds great. I know that you came up through the David Allen ranks, and I'd love to kind of touch upon that just for a minute to see, what part of his process did you take to heart and you've incorporated within your methodology as well?
I would say that curiosity, when I started spending time with David, and this is back in the 1990s, actually, and it was before he had written the book, Getting Things Done. And I realized that he had been doing for a lot longer what I had just started coming into, which was reading the greats, going back and studying what does Ecclesiastes say? There's nothing new under the sun. What were the fundamentals of whether it was productivity, performance, time management? And that's when I started looking at the planners. I mean, what David got me started on was getting what was in my mind out so I could see it. Now they call them manipulatives in the education biz. I like to touch, hold, and move things. A Post-it pad and a Sharpie are among my favorite tools. At my home office in Montgomery, Alabama, I put a 4x9 whiteboard in my home office. What I got from David, probably the first thing that I got from David was to get from in my brain outside. And then really there were two reasons for this, Charles. One was so I could see it, right? I mean, in my mind, everything's big. It's only when I write it down that get the car tuned up compares itself with go buy lettuce from the market. But in my mind, there were two to-dos that I was managing back and forth. But the second reason, and I think this is the testimony to whatever success I think I've experienced, I let other people see it. And I realized very early, probably in my late 20s, I don't have any pride in showing you where I'm challenged. Now, the you is relative, right? I mean, it's probably why I have nearly 20,000 connections on LinkedIn, because I read something, I watch something, I see something. Recently, I was listening to a Blinkist, a book summary. I don't know if there's any Blinkist subscribers out there. And I wrote to the author. I went to LinkedIn and I wrote, and I said, "Hey, Ernest," Mr. Adams, I called him. He is an expert in the DEI space. He had done a hour-long program with Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor. And I wrote to him. And Charles, within 18 hours, we're now connected on LinkedIn with the note that said, "Hey, let's connect in real time in the new year." And so this concept of, yes, the getting things done, for those of you who follow that approach, that getting things done approach on the surface level, quote, the product, was to get things out of my brain. I found that there was a secondary reason to do that. And the hashtag I would throw out there is better together. The moment that I started letting people know where I was challenged, where I was stuck, all of a sudden people were out of the woodwork. "Hey, Dr. Womack, how can I help? Hey, Jason, there's someone I could introduce you to." And all of a sudden, that concept of getting after my MITs, which we'll talk about in a few moments, it became easier, less resource dependent, and then quite frankly, just more fun.
I love that. And I'm an advocate of that approach as well. You got to get it out of your head to have impact and to really feel productive on those things. And many people feel behind every single day. There's not enough time to do it all. But you advocate for the approach that it's so important to think of work in terms of 15-minute increments. Why is that?
This is great. And so again, this one came, I didn't make this up. I was reading a book about Bruce Lee, right? The actor, the athlete, the father, the spouse, an amazing human being. Anyway, he put this quote. It was one sentence in one book, and he said, "A day is made up of 96 blocks of 15 minutes." And Charles, I highlighted that thing, but I haven't let it go. I mean, this is probably 15, 20 years ago I read that line. And it stopped me in my tracks because I'd seen people for years attempt to time block, time manage, schedule, plan. I've had people put fake meetings on their calendars, hoping that that would help them be more productive. I've had people bring work on a vacation. I've had people go on vacation at the end of a work trip. And here's what I realized. Personally, I don't plan my work in 15-minute increments. I review portions that I think should or could have been more impactful. Let me explain. This podcast will be about 30 minutes that you and I will discuss this book called Your Best Just Got Better. That is roughly 2% of our day. Listeners, watchers, that's a roughly, okay, it's 2/96. Just go with me on the math here, right? I have to look back, Charles, and go, was it worth it? Were those 2 blocks of 15 minutes valuable for you and I, right? Did I have a new insight? Did I put words together in a way that I've never ordered them before? Did you and I become closer as colleagues and friends? But maybe more importantly for you, the listener, I know if you're listening, well, I know if you're listening to this, you're probably doing something else, right? You're in your car commuting, you're going out for a walk, you're on the treadmill, maybe you're doing some gardening. If you're watching this, I hope that you're doing fewer things that take less of your attention. Is it worth it? Are you going to get out of these 30 minutes with something of equal or greater value? So how does this apply to the workday? How does this apply to a weekend day? What I might do at the end of a workday, Charles, is I'll look back on my calendar and I'll look and I'll see, hey, I was in a 90-minute meeting with 3 of my colleagues. Wonderful. I'm going to unpack those 6 15-minute blocks. I'm going to look at the agenda and I'm going to compare the agenda to the notes I took during the meeting. And oh, by the way, the notes that I take in the meeting are going to be things like, did we start on time? Did we end on time? Because right there, if it's a 90-minute meeting, but we didn't start till 10 minutes late and we went 15 minutes over, all of a sudden I'm starting to get more, I'm not going to say the word control. I'm gaining more awareness about where my time went. So yes, I think about time in blocks of 15 minutes. No, I don't plan my day in blocks of 15 minutes, but I'll implore upon you, if you're driving your kiddo on a weekend errand to get her or him to the soccer field, if that's a 15-minute drive, how do you get the most out of that 1% of that 24-hour block? Review it, reflect on it, assess it, run that by a mentor. This is where I'll make a play, Charles, where I'll say, after I look at something, I did this a lot when I was writing my dissertation over the past 4 years. I would get through a 90-minute or a 2-hour block. When I met with my dissertation chair, I didn't share with her first what I had created. First, we talked about how I was using my time. I'd heard horror stories of my fellow academics who had stretched a 3-year academic dissertation doctoral program into 5 years, in 6 years, in 7 years. And quite frankly, I didn't want to do it. And so that is what I would ask you, if you're listening to watching this, look back on your day today. Pick a block of time and really unpack it. If it was a 1-hour-long meeting, what did you do in the first 900 seconds? Did you review the agenda? Did you acknowledge people for being there? Did you set the tone for a yes and meeting? And then you can take a look at the next 3 15-minute blocks.
I love that as a breakdown of the day. And I also agree when you say that your most important resource is not your time, but your focus. And you talk about the focus line, and that's the duration you can hold your attention on anyone or task or project with minimal distractions to maximize your productivity. Because you could have a lot of this time laid out, but if you're not focused, what are you going to get done, right?
I really think that the pandemic, and I shouldn't be laughing when I say this, it's a very serious thing, but I think the pandemic only magnified this. Our focus is fleeting. I know this, you know this. I challenge any one of you to pick up a book, to read a page from the top left to the bottom right. Can you hold your focus across 250 words? Can you hold your focus around 15 pages? Let me go back to the 15-minute thing, right? So if I can, on average, read a page of a book in 15 minutes, I should be able to read 15 pages. Charles, my hand goes up. I do not know the last time I sat down and truly read 15 pages without stopping to look up a word, to identify a term, to go to Wikipedia to learn more about that thing that I'm reading about right now. So if we take the reading example, or going to a different room of the house example, we put that off to the side. I'll invite you to look at your calendar for the next week. And as you look at your calendar for the next week, what do you know deserves longer blocks of your focus? What do you know you need to sit down with a blank piece of paper, a big whiteboard, a mind map manager kind of a application on your computer, and just think? I'll give you the tactic I use, the secret, if you will. I've divided the kind of work I do into creation or consumption. And so when I did that, I want to go consume information, watch a video, listen to a podcast, read a book or an article, break. Then I want to go create something. I want to draft a blog post. I want to write the beginning part of an outline of an article. I want to create the main 3 acts of the next speech that I'm going to give. I found that when I was attempting to bounce between consume, create, back to consume, back to create, I would lose my focus a little bit. It wasn't multitasking as much as it was rapid refocusing. So as I think about focus, I do call it that focus line. Right? How long can I stay focused on one thing until I break to another thing that I'm focused on? And unfortunately, I'll give you the bad news first. Willpower is not enough. In my mind, environment over willpower. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my environment, right? If I know I need to read, I'm going to do everything I can to download the book to my Kindle and then turn my Kindle off the internet. because I know me, I'm going to highlight a section. And then the temptation is, ooh, let me share this with my LinkedIn community. I go share with my LinkedIn community. Ooh, that's Susan just posted something. Oh, there's a conference that I might want to apply to. And then all of a sudden, Charles, I'm just out of it. So what can you do? How can you set your environment up to support you staying on that focus line? For how long? That is a great question. I always go with what's about my attention span. And I know me, I'm good for 15 to 45 minutes before I have to take a mental or a physical or both break.
I agree. And I've read several books now that really time management, productivity is about energy management.
Oh,
So it's knowing what time of the day where your energy peaks and making sure you be done with those most important tasks, those MITs. So for me, I'm a morning person. My energy is best earlier in the day. So I'm going to spend that focused time doing those MITs, those things that are going to require concentration. Try to get a couple of those 90-minute sessions in the morning so that in the afternoon, I'm doing tasks that I don't need to be as focused as much, right? Responding to email, stuff like that. Give us some more insight into that and ways in which people can identify their energy throughout the day and when they should be doing those MITs.
I love it. And what I want to do is I want to unpack and I'm going to separate those both. So I'm going to talk about this concept called at my best when, and then we'll come in and address the MITs, the most important things. So there's two factors. I heard one of them in your sharing there, which is time. The other factor is back to environment, but it's specifically people. Yes, me too. I'm a morning person. If I wake up in the morning and I'm going to go get organized, I'm going to get myself on track, I'm going to take on that one MIT, and my boss calls because he just got from his leadership a important task, a most important thing, that just overrode my great time. I'm still going to be productive because it's early in the morning, but I got overridden by what he had to send down. So what do I mean by that? When I think of at my best when, there's the what I can control, and then what I've asked the universe for help with. So again, back to the calendar, right? And you're going to kind of get through the themes of my sharing. The calendar is my sacred space, right? My wife, Jody, she'll say things in audience. She'll say, things on my calendar should not surprise me. Because every one of us has woken up one morning, looked at our calendar and said, oh no, that's today. That is today. So what I'll do is I'll look at my calendar, Charles. I might look 72, 96 hours out in advance, specifically at that. I call it the first third of the day. For me, the first third of the day is when I wake up in the morning till about lunchtime. Then there's lunchtime till I go to bedtime. Then there's go to bedtime, and then there is wake up time. Oh, by the way, I realized early on that third of the day is just as, perhaps even more important than the other 2/3. We may have time to talk about that later. So take a look. I'll look at the calendar for the next 3, 4, 5 days, and I'll ask myself, what are the first thirds? That's when I know I peak. What could those get overridden by? Am I already scheduled to work at home because I'm in a hybrid flex, work from home, return to office situation? Am I only a remote worker? Do all I do is work from home and I'm 2 time zones away from the boss that I work for or the team that reports to me? Or am I commuting into the office because we've returned to that space? When I look at that first third, I ask for help, Charles. And maybe this is going to be another theme that people listening or watching this. Productivity is a team sport. It doesn't matter how clean or complete my to-do list is. It doesn't matter how zeroed out my inbox is. If the people around me don't know what I'm carrying, what I'm visioning, or what I'm working on, it makes it more challenging to be productive because they're going to ask me for a minute at some point in time.
That's great. Well, I wanted to just also talk about some of the technology because a lot of people there's a lot of options out there to be more organized, to be more productive, to get things done more efficiently. You have some great tips on all of those things, but I'd love to hear your preferred technology platforms. I know you use Evernote. I use Trello a lot. It seems to work well for me. Everyone's a little bit different, but what are some of the most effective ones for people to start getting organized and more productive?
I love that question because what it does is it lets me talk about that concept called MITs in relationship to a more important context, which is how do I organize all this stuff? So on a maybe a psychological and social framework, most important thing, I wake up in the morning. I can do this on a Sunday. I can do this on a Tuesday. Charles, I will do this on a vacation day. Stay with me here. I will ask myself, what are the 3, 2, or even one thing that deserves more of me today? It's not, what are the 3 things I'm going to get done today? I'm going to get a lot done today. But what are the 3, 2, or one thing that deserves more of me today? Right? I'll timestamp this. I'm in Northern California. I'm visiting my parents. It's my stepmom's birthday today. Date stamp. One of my most important things today is to be available when my stepmom's around. That's going to change tomorrow. That will change next Tuesday. That will change on March 17th. So what I like to do is I like to wake up, and then what I'm going to do is, now we've got the psychology, the sociology, right? What do I think and what do we decide is important? Now, how do I track it? Where do I put it? How do I make sure that I get to it? And so I would say, to start with, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation. I'm going to get it out of my brain. You're right. For the organization aspect, I'm a fan of any list management system. And I've used them all. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Palm Pilot system from way back in the old days. I've used Word documents. And there was a stretch of time, maybe a year or two, where I had a folder on my desktop and I had 7 files. And each file was a simple list. I had a list of projects that I was managing. And that'd be a great place to start. If you ask me, where do I start? I'd say walk around your house and your office, go look at your calendar and your email list, and make a list of all of the things you said yes to. Once you have that inventory, and for most of you listening to this, you're going to have 50, 80, 100 things that you've said yes to. Then what I do, Charles, is I make a different list. And I have 6 other lists, but we can talk about that later. I make a different list, and that is the corresponding, what is a task associated with the project. Okay. While I was writing the dissertation, that was a 3.5-year-long project called Finished Dissertation. But at any given point in time, I could look over at one of my lists. Do I have to call someone for an interview? Do I have to email a follow-up to a conversation? Do I have to review an article in anticipation of an upcoming interview or further research? And you'll notice that the lists that I made, those all were dependent upon the kind of work it was going to take to get momentum on the project. Now, as far as technology, what I'm going to ask all of you to use is the one you use. I know, I wish I could make it harder, but I've got people out there who email themselves a reminder of something to do, from their phone to their Outlook, from their Outlook to their iPhone or their BlackBerry in the old days. I have people who use Excel. Right? You can bring up an Excel spreadsheet, Charles, and have tabs down along the bottom. My challenge to you is start with that projects list, because once you get that complete, 2 things. Number 1, you can look to see what kind of prioritization you need to put them in. But maybe more importantly, you can show the inventory to someone. For me, there's 3 someones I'm always going to show whatever list I use, whatever technology I use. There's 3 people I'm going to show my projects list to, Charles. My boss, my spouse, and a mentor. Hey, boss, here's what I think I've said yes to. Does this map and match to your priorities for me? Hey, Jody, here are the things I said yes or yes to. Am I missing anything that we need to be working on? And then I'm going to pick the appropriate mentor, Charles, because by definition, a mentor should be able to look at me. They know me, and they should look at what I'm putting my attention on, and they can guide, encourage, or challenge what it is that I'm saying yes to.
Great stuff. And I agree with you. The best system is the one that you're going to use or have used, right? So there's no preferred technology platform. It depends on your preferences, and it needs to be customized for you. Before we end the episode, I'd love to talk about a part of the day that not many people talk about. Everyone talks about the morning, making sure you get the best out of your mornings, making sure you started on the right foot, and you do those MITs. But you have 3 questions that you ask at the end of each day to set yourself up for success the next day.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about those so that leaders and everyone listening can identify that and can hopefully realize the importance of ending your day on a high note in the right way.
Because we said there were 3, we're going to have we're going to have you, the listener, the watcher, you're going to come up with your 3rd question. And I'm going to do that just to kind of keep you a little bit more hooked into this thing. Charles, I've been ending my day, and I tend to do this as I'm finishing my workday. I used to do it really close to bedtime. I've moved it up a little bit. And here are the 2 questions that I'll give the audience to play around with. Number 1, what did I finish today? In a world that rewards speed, it rewards completion, it rewards that movement forward, what I've seen some people do is they end the day only thinking about what they have to do tomorrow. All right. They'll get their to-do list for tomorrow. They'll look at the calendar for tomorrow. They're going to send an email for tomorrow. So I would say just to run a 5-day experiment. At the end of the next 5 days, include the weekend if you're listening to this at that point of the week, and sometime around dinner time, I don't know, maybe go around the dinner table with your friends or family, call someone on the phone or on a FaceTime, and just share with each other, hey, what'd you finish today? What'd you knock off the list? What are you proud of that day? Chemically, what happens to the brain, a little boost of dopamine, maybe some serotonin kicks in there, and you end the day on a little bit more of a high. Here's the next one. Who did I help today? Who did I help today? And what I found is that when I go through that inventory, this is me personal, 2 answers have shown up. 1, yeah, it was great. Someone came, I got to work with them on something. I recommended they read a book. I introduced them to something. I helped them solve some problem. And then the intuition kicks in, Charles. And often, I'm not going to say every day, often I'll look back on the day and realize, I think I missed an opportunity. I maybe missed an opportunity in a meeting for some follow-up afterwards. I missed an opportunity in an email I sent where I could have put a link or maybe put an extra PDF attachment. So yes, while I'm asking myself about the past and what did I complete today and who did I get to help that day, I'm also planting the seed for what kind of a leader do I want to be? And this is setting us up for talking about the first of the 5 questions of Get Momentum, I know, but what do I want people to know that I can help them with?
Wonderful advice. I also advocate with Marshall Goldsmith with his book with those 21 questions that he gets asked every single day. Someone calls him up and, did I make an impact? Did I make meaningful progress on my MITs? Are just a few of those, but really recommend that. It can have profound impacts if done consistently over time. So as we reach the end of this episode, Jason, love for you to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you.
Please find me on LinkedIn. It's my name is Jason Womack. I'm there. I publish every now and then. Of course, stay in touch through IMS, either attend an upcoming session or go consume some more of the podcasts that we've got here. And then, of course, the books are on Amazon. And if you do wind up reading one, please let me know what you got from it and how you use it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Womack, for joining me on today's episode.
Absolute pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share with others and post about it on social media. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which has video recordings of all the episodes of this podcast, along with bite-sized segments called single servings that are designed to answer your most pressing leadership and management questions. Remember, until next time, it's not what you know that counts, but what you do consistently that makes a difference.